Well, really simple here, guys. We've got Scott James coming in. He most recently was the defensive coordinator at University of New Hampshire, was at Holy Cross as the defensive coordinator with Bob Chesney before that. Been in New England, up and down the East Coast for a long time, really well respected in the area. And, has been on the grass, right? Last fall was doing it. So having a little bit more context to what's going on in the college football space right now. Coach James, thanks for joining.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the kind words about being well respected in the Northeast and in New England, and excited to teach and talk a little bit about what we've seen over the last 25 years and how people are adapting, how we were adapting to the new climate of football, new ecosystem of football, and excited to see where we take everything.
In my lens, Coach, from having my own experience in it from the support staff and going through the ranks to where you've been running the room, right, and building the structure, the philosophy at the front of the staff table, so to speak, right, the right-hand man to these head coaches who've gone on to other bigger jobs. Like, where have you seen kind of the pitfalls that we all know in the industry right now weaving their way, or leaking into the rooms that you were in?
Yeah, well, I think the number one, the leakage is in the top capital each of these institutions has, which is people. Whether we worked at schools that had high budgets, low budgets, it didn't matter. It was the people and the systems that would fracture. And that fracture led to what we'd say a lack of success or delayed success. The staffs, the teams that tied it together a little bit more systematically, consistently had the same results, right? We're consistently able to rebound quickly from whatever might have happened. Maybe a coordinator left, position guy left, or maybe a star player left. That institutional knowledge in the capital of people was the best indicator of success. And now with transfer portal and the ability and the mobility of students, just as well as the coaches have always had, you've got to have those systems in place, I believe. And what I've seen successfully work are the ones that have had systems in place for coaches, players, and institutional. And that's for everybody. It's not just for your quarterbacks, not just for a defensive lineman. It's for your quality control coaches. It's for your strength coach. It's for your sports medicine staff. It's for your academic staff. When people walk in the building, do they feel like this is how we do what we do, right? And it doesn't have to be very rigid, but there has to be some sense of infrastructure that could withstand the ebbs and flows of, like I said, the ecosystem of college football.
Coach, consider this my first tangent of many, but the old Mike Tyson of everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So your new staff, right, coming in, you guys all sit down at the full staff table. The word is always alignment, right? So if we were going to go macro to micro, right, I can't wait to get in the mud and figure out the stuff with the players. How do you look at it, whether you're working with a head coach who's an alum or a guy who's taken other jobs and proven to be successful, right? When you guys look at each other, right, how do you get aligned with the administration and make sure you have the framework to have the organization you want to run?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and it's a great observation. You're coming from different places, and maybe the person's an alum, maybe the person's not. I think the first thing that we've had success with, or that I've observed people to have success with, is that empathy, right? That most people that are working in our world, whether you're coaches or administrators, right, you're doing some from a place of service to the students. That's critical. If we all identify that we're in service to the students, the institution, and that quote unquote that front porch analogy, that's a great starting point. It's very hard to not align when you start from a place where the students are, and the service to the students are the priority. Now, there may be, like I said, institutional, what success was before, the institutional knowledge or the institutional framework. There might be some moments where there's gaps. And when you're coming in, whether you're an alum or you're new staff, or there's a mix or a blend, there's some sense that there's something to be said about the respect that we have for those gaps, and then the knowledge and the systems to fill in those gaps as we build what we're trying to do. If you just come in and say, this is what we're doing, right, that's not going to work. And I've been that guy, right? I've been that guy at times. Hey, we just got to do this. And you're pounding your chest, and it doesn't work particularly well. You have to understand that there's 20, 30, 40 years of experience, maybe only 4 months of experience that the student just transitioned from playing to coaching, but there is something there. And in the wisdom of groups, you want to bring that to staffs, to infrastructure, and to administrations. If you do that, it's a little bit easier to navigate the ebbs and the flows and the changing ecosystem we already mentioned. So the first thing is the empathy, and shared empathy with the staff that you have for not only your students who you're trying to serve, but for the paths and the decisions that have been made prior to you arriving. That's probably the number one thing. From there, I think it's all in everybody's responsibility to be a surrogate to the institution and then to the head coach. So the head coach has to set that rhythm. And as an assistant coach, a career assistant coach, and coordinator for the last, bit or so, 15 years or so, it's one thing to have your opinion. It's one thing to have your ideas, right? But can you align them? Can you somehow structure them where it falls in line with the head coach's vision? Because if you do that, right, it's going to, again, smooth out the onboarding of any staff members. It's going to smooth out the onboarding of players. It's going to make things quite a bit more efficient. It's the ones, head coaches included, administrators included, that come in and say, hey, we only do it this way, or we have to do it that way, in a rigid tone, right? It's another way of saying, or there's another angle to that, whereas, hey, can you do it like this? Can you do it like this for me so that I can be at my best? And one of the best head coaches I worked for, that's how he approached me back in 2019. He said, if you can just simply put things in my language, if you can simply put things in a structured or in a format that I'm familiar with, I can do what I do best. He's a great head coach, right? He's a great person. So that lesson can't be lost when a staff's taking over or a staff's beginning a new year. Maybe you've had a great year. Maybe you just started year one, maybe year two, and it was a tragedy year one. Well, just reflect. There's enough wisdom in all these rooms and all these locker rooms to get us where we want to go. It's still coming down to blocking, tackling, and catching or protecting the ball, right? It's not that hard to figure out. It's football, right? So it comes back to what's happened in that locker room and office previously.
Coach, we could have a whole episode on what you were talking about right there. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, we could. Yeah. To be honest, I don't think a lot of staffs, Steve, I don't think a lot of staffs have that conversation as often as they should, or as distant, I would say, not as with the friction, right? Like let's have a conversation about how we should operate. Let's have a conversation about it, and let's get it all out there. And knowing that vulnerability is going to lend itself to success, right? Because
no doubt. And I think of the Matt Nagy play call sheet that had BU on the back of it, right? It all comes down to every place is going to be different, every person's going to be different, and you look. Let's be real about it. Coach is coming from Holy Cross and UNH. Like, one of those guys is in the Ivy League and took a lot of guys with him. The other guys, in the Big Ten and took a lot of guys with him.
Right.
So I'm writing it down on my little grease board here, Coach. That'll never go away. But you're not only managing up, right, as a staff. Hey, the athletic director, the boosters, the president, to whatever expectations you want to be aligned on. We're going to get to the players here. I know I keep pushing that off, but it's the heart of what we're talking about. Your staff better be connected and interwoven. And I don't care if it's you being the coordinator, and you've told me before your DB's coach was a student assistant that you hired full time, right? Because he knows what the expectation is, right? Like, every NFL coach, Shane Steichen, Nick Sirianni, they're all talking about the connection, right, of the players in the organization. Like, how did you work to connect that staff, right? Now, let's go from head coach staff room to you and your unit room or defensive meeting room. How did you breed that with the staff so that the same message went from athletic department to head coach to now your defensive side?
That's right. I think that if you touched on something, Steve, about managing up, that's the hardest thing any person in a leadership role can do, right? And that's probably the hardest thing any football coach can do. You're trying to manage up because if I can manage up the ladder in the administrative food chain, the downstream effects of that are it's like greasing the rails, right? All of a sudden, I've managed up particularly well. I've messaged up particularly well. Those people that are controlling the checkbooks, the pocketbooks, the access might be a little bit more inclined to say, yeah, I believe that. I love that. Let's go. To do that, get into your follow-up question. The program has to align it around a certain set of values, right? I think that's the first and foremost things. And one thing that we did, and I think, out there in California, probably consistently is being done, is can we get everybody in the program to agree to at least 3 things that are effective, regardless of your role, and are effective in who we attract and bring in. And so we would often say out there, attention to detail, right? Positive attitude and urgency. And as time went on, we would add layers to that so that it was a little bit either easier to remember, or the same message was being delivered with a slightly different tinge so that it maybe populated anew. So we might say, positive attitude / trust, right? It's one thing to have a positive attitude, but I can display that positive attitude with trust. And we put that on a wristband and it says PAT, right? Well, it's easy to remember, right? We would say, hey, let's be urgent. Let's be urgent in what we do. Well, what do we do? Well, first you got to define what we do if you're going to be urgent to that thing. So we had systems in place. How did we walk into the weight room? How did we walk on the field? Sean McDonald at the University of New Hampshire did a wonderful job of this, and I'm sure he pirated it from somewhere. But when you were at University of New Hampshire in Durham, you run to a thing called the concentration line. And I know hundreds and thousands of coaches probably have something similar. But there's a system, there's a clear sense of urgency. When we hit this line, we're going to run. This year it might be 10 yards. Next year it might be 50 yards. Who knows where we're practicing tomorrow? But we're going to have a line that says and screams, this is urgent, right? And so when we did it with Ches, that urgency was tagged with SYS for systems. I can ask you to be urgent, but again, how am I asking to be urgent? What am I asking to be urgent with, right? Attention to detail. Everybody says that. ATD, for years it's been up here in Durham, right? It's in a locker room, ATD. You can yell ATD. Everyone knows a demerit just happened, something like that, right? But what are we paying attention to? If we give everybody too much, well then it can fall apart. Bill McGovern used to say this all the time, the former linebackers coach and coordinator, NFL, major college football. I can only probably give students 3 things to be really attentive with today. When they leave this meeting, can I give them 3 things to be attentive with when they leave the room, right? So in the creation of a staff, in the creation of a foundation, can you rally everybody around 3 things, however you say your 3 things? I think the best thing to accomplish that is, what 3 things can we do, irregardless of what room we're in or what field we're on, who we're bringing in, who we're speaking to, that we can preach as a team and as a staff that's going to say, this is what we stand for. The whole thing, you've seen this, you've got videos on this. What's culture really mean? Culture isn't a billboard. Culture isn't the poster. Culture is the behaviors that are observed when someone walks into the room, right?
Yeah, Coach, you're reading my mind here and bringing it back to the film. Like, we can all grab clips from a practice, right, of Mike Vrabel will talk full tilt to the tackle, right? He never talks in lopes. If I see a change in body position, right? If you raise your chest and you're not already full sprint to the ball, if you change pace, you didn't go full tilt, right? If that guy broke that tackle and you had to restart, right? You weren't going full tilt. There's your indicator on film, right?
That's right.
Can you give me an example of something, a way that you guys found a way to tie it to the football, right? Was it the opening 2 minutes on a takeaway Tuesday or whatever that is, that was like, man, these values that are on the wall, these abbreviations, like, how did you find a way to tie it to the football film and give these kids a visual?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head with Vrabel and full tilt and not a change in tempo. I think every coach does this. All the staffs do this, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is that we're doing the pursuit drills. Right. Who are we? Let me show you how on film who we are. Back in 2023, when I was at Holy Cross, in 2025, when I was at New Hampshire, we had very young teams due to injury, graduation, etc. But peers, and this happened to me actually just recently, someone from a major college from a Power 4 team had called me, had seen some film, and it was like, listen, they might not have known exactly what to do on every snap. They were pretty young, but man, they played particularly hard. Well, there you go. There's your values, right? We're going to play with urgency, right? The system is growing, but the system started with a sense of urgency. So when you start to put together these pursuit drills and these identity drills, right? And that's probably how you want to bucket them, right? If we're going to do a pursuit drill, we're going to try to craft out our summer training. Let's craft out one for urgency. That's your pursuit drill. Maybe you want to craft out a drill for attention to detail. Well, we all do stance and starts, where they start with strength and conditioning and a dynamic warm-up, or they do or begin with special teams on a kickoff drill. Does everybody in the organization know how we start and stop? Does everybody know how we stand? We take the line. How much of the line do we take? Is our right foot up? Is our left foot back? Left foot up? Is our right foot up on the way down? Left foot up on the way back? There's some great drills out there on special teams where you get the entire team lined up, chest over knees. I'm in my 80-20 stance, and we're going to roll over, and we're going to be efficient. We're not going to squish the bug. Every step matters. We're not the fastest team, so we're going to make sure that we get every yard we can when we have the opportunity to get it. If you have that attention to detail and drill like that, again, a kickoff drill, beautiful time to do that. Well, most of your team isn't going to be on that kickoff team come September 1st, right? Or whenever your first game might be. But every receiver is going to start that way. And not every receiver is going to start that way. So will every stand-up defensive end. He'll start that way. And they're all going to be going forward. And if they're going forward and they got to go there quick and on time, they can't squish the bug. They can't turn the foot. They can't have a drop in their athletic position. They've got to be roll out. They got to be able to roll over and go. So if, again, we go back to how do we manage up? How do we manage around? We have 3 clear pillars: attention, detail, positive attitude, urgency, or whatever you want them to be. And then we establish or attach drills to those things so that when we do them, they become programmatic. They're programmatic and institutional. And they can always come back.
There's the word. That one will keep coming up, fellas. Put that one on your bingo card. And Coach, I just circled and underlined, asterisk, whatever, like the identity drills. What a time of year to think back to those pillars. and just make sure that those are in there for summer OTAs, the first few days of fall camp, right? Those, hey, the helmet practices, right? Where we're all trying to find a way to make the best use of that period. But the other programs that I've seen, and, Brendan Staley, when he was with the Chargers, right? They had a shirt with Derwin James and it just said our way, right? Like, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. This is our way. And that came from when he was at Akron, right? With Tom Arth, right? That was probably at John Carroll when they were there. But like, I know Aaron Best at Eastern Washington's our kind of guys, OKGs, right? Like, whatever that is, you just keep taking it, whether it's admin, the staff, the pillars with the players. And coach, I do want to
You got a great video from John Harbaugh, right? Where he talks about principles and methods, right? The words change, right? You might the places may change. He's gone from being in Baltimore to where he's now in New York. He's not going to change what he's done or how he's done it. You go through coaches upon coaches, success upon success. They might just change the word. They might flip the word around. They may put a little, like I said earlier, a tinge on it that's a little bit more colorful than it was in the past. But in the end, principles and methods,
1,000%.
Taking a shirt from Akron and going wherever you go, what's the difference?
I think there's a lot of positive to that, right? You see all these guys move up in jobs, right? Whether it's, going from GA, assistant coordinator, head coach, or head coach moving from D3 to Division I, right? Like, it's football, it's quality ideas, it's doing things the right way. And I do want to keep this tight, coach, and make sure we're respectful of people's time. If they're driving in the car recruiting, right? If they're, listen to this while they cut the grass, like, this is a beautiful time of year to get better, right? And that's what Teach Tapes comes down to is there's 32 NFL teams. These are what they're doing, right? I'm not telling you how to coach O-line or D-line, but here's some great things from people who major in it, right? And make it yours. And what I love about this conversation, coach, is you've been living and breathing those problems, right? And very few of us ever thought we'd get out of football, but now we find this next chapter of life and you embrace it. But like, how would you set the runway, coach, right? With the language, the emphasis on culture, and then implementing it, like, make it real, right? Could you kind of take us out and kind of lay a track for what these guys are going to hear as we keep doing these?
Yeah, I think as we keep doing these short podcasts, short videos, however we present it, it goes back to, again, I'll keep bringing it back to that initial staff meeting where you're managing upstream or around or downstream to your team. Can you create a foundation and an infrastructure that can be repeated, that can then not only be repeated with words, that's a whole nother bucket. Are you spending the time as a coaching staff getting everybody to say the same thing the same way? Can you get people to buy into that and understand and teach why that matters? It's efficiency. Why would we want to call how we stand on the football field 3 different things when different coaches might be coaching that player? Perhaps you're a high school coach that gets the offensive and defensive guys on different days. Perhaps you're a special teams coordinator that gets the offensive and defensive guys in different meetings. If we have and use the same language, you can begin that in summer training with your strength staff. This is how we stand, this is how we run. It gets woven in, gets kneaded in right into individual work, unit work, and then teamwork, right? So are you taking the time to create the structure you want, the foundation, the infrastructure you want? And then as we go forward, can we make sure that we are repurposing that same dialogue, repurposing that same language into the drills that we're going to do with our staff? And whether we're watching T-tapes here to get ideas, right? Whether we're watching T-tapes or other tapes to generate even meeting ideas, can we then just simply, and do we have a way of flipping those terms into our own world? Because I'll tell you this, it's one thing to watch a video, and again, like we talked about, Steve, hundreds of them here. Could we and do we have the means to put that in our own language? Do we have our ownership on this? Because again, everything's pirated, right? Or is it completely foreign to you and you're just going to adopt everything that you see, and that's going to create the friction that we're talking about? If you want to put these things into action, you've got to start with a foundation. 3 things or 4 things, 5 things that maybe your program really stands for. Then can you show those things in a visual way by behaviors, both in drill for the programmatic, then the transferable skill of it going from programmatic to positional work, right? So programmatic, we're just developing the fundamentals of our team and our identity, then into the transferable skill where it relates to them positionally. You do those things, you've trimmed the fat, you've rendered the fat, and now you've got an efficient, moving organization that can take the young and elevate them to their best God-given talent. And I think as we keep doing these things, we'll keep refining them into certain spheres of football, right? Programmatic, transferable, positional. And I think that's the best way to approach it.
Let's go. And Coach, Rod, just again, writing down in my notes here is like taking ownership, right? There is no stock answer. There is no playbook that you pull out of the bin in the attic and just put it in front of a 2026 athlete.
That's
right. And what we're doing, I hope, in this conversation is filling in some of those gaps.
That's right.
From the videos that we're finding for the last 4 or 5 years with Teach Tapes, right? Putting a real explanation to it, a practitioner of someone who's used the product and has been in those rooms months ago, right? So, Coach, look forward to kind of building this out, making that connectivity from the product to the meeting room to hopefully a staff that can get better this fall.
That's right. Love it. Absolutely love it. Looking forward to each and every meeting.
Appreciate it, Coach. Talk soon.
See you soon.